So hello, everybody. I'm Tom Santilli, film critic for Movie Show Plus. I am here with special guest Nate Adams, film critic for theonlycritic.com. Nate, how you doing today, man?
Oh, I'm doing great. Ready to dive in to our very eclectic lineup of films.
Like two warriors going into battle on like an ancient battlefield. I have nothing but respect for you, my friend.
I love you too,
for
Tom.
what's about to come here. We want to know that it's all in good spirit.
I need to put
Mostly.
on some pads or something. I need to get the helmet ready. Start, like a swordsmith, blacksmith
Yeah,
getting the. All
exactly.
right.
Getting prepared.
Yeah.
So everybody, we're going to get into four films today, all four of which we have disagreements on, some stronger than others. We're going to talk about Old by M. Night Shyamalan. We're going to talk about the new G.I. Joe movie, Snake Eyes, and we're going to talk about Jungle Cruise. We're going to end it on a in-depth discussion on The Green Knight. So that's what we have coming up. So Nate, let's just dive into our first film. Okay, so Old is directed by M. Night Shyamalan. It's a thriller about a family on a tropical holiday who discover that the secluded beach that they're relaxing on for a few hours somehow is causing them to age rapidly, reducing their entire lives into a single day. The movie, of course, stars Gail Garcia Bernal, Vicky Krieps, Rufus Sewell, Alex Wolff, Thomasin McKenzie. It's actually not. It's the adapted screenplay is by M. Night Shyamalan. It's directed by M. Night Shyamalan, of course. You know, movies like Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Split. But this is not an original work of his. It's based on a story called The Sandcastle. So that's where we're starting today, Nate. What did you think of Old?
So listen, M. Night Shyamalan is my guy. I love M. Night Shyamalan. I think he is one of the bolder. He is a visionary director. Like the way that he molds his stories and the way that he puts human elements in everything that he does. So I was actually a big fan of Old, but not. I can acknowledge that it's also a very strange and bizarre film that I think you are either going to love it or you are going to hate it, because I can imagine that there are some weird sequences throughout the film that people were probably eyeing the exit and wondering, what did I get myself into? But listen, I would rather watch a movie like Old and a director like M. Night Shyamalan swing for the fences 1,000 times and miss, or maybe in this case, maybe he gets like a single, not maybe a walk-off, maybe a double, and it kind of works and connects. I'd rather watch this 10 times than when we talk about Snake Eyes later, watch 5 Snake Eyes movies. So it's bold, and whether you have a reaction to it, that you love it or hate it, the fact that you're having a reaction, I think is exactly what M. Night Shyamalan wants. And yeah, it kind of, I don't know if it sticks to the landing because, he's known for his endings, but I didn't hate it. But it was enough of kind of a body horror element to it as well that I was in it. The performances are actually really solid. And I actually got choked up at one scene. There's one scene that was really, really touching and tender. And I think you know which one it is, but I didn't age. Let's put it that way. I didn't feel like I was aging while I watched this film.
Well, I didn't hate the movie, and I agree with you too. I would rather watch an M. Night Shyamalan movie than a lot of these other like generic movies, because
Like a Jungle Cruise
at least
that we get.
yeah, at least he's taking swings. Like, you made a baseball reference. Like, he's at least swinging for the fence every time, and it doesn't always make contact, but
I can't defend him on some of the stuff. Like Last Airbender, no way. We gotta.
Right, exactly. He has absolutely some turkeys in there. But what I liked about Old is the premise. It's kind of a cool premise. It's creepy. The whole movie kind of reminded me of like a Twilight Zone episode where it's just kind of off and you don't really know why. However, I can't get over. Unfortunately, one of the traits of an M. Night Shyamalan movie is just like terribly stiff dialogue, and like there's no like real, like, if this movie would have felt a little bit more grounded in like reality, with like people talking the way that normal people talk and like people acting the way that real people act, I feel like it would have been so much more effective. You know what I mean? And I don't want to give anything away, but like, if I'm on a beach and a dead body washes up, like, I'm not just going to be like, okay, let's get to the bottom of this. I'm going to be like, I'm getting the hell out of here, dude. Like, or, I'd be screaming or like waving my arms around. Like, everybody in this movie is just kind of like cool with that, and they're just like hanging out and like, hey, let's try to figure it out. And then instead of just kind of having faith in the premise, I felt like he kept then introducing like, you know, all of these new things into it that didn't really need to be talked about. Like, and it's hard to not spoil the film, but like, you know, some things happen with the younger characters, and it kind of felt like almost like, you know, like unnecessary, like new little conflicts that they had to deal with over and over. He was trying to say all this stuff about aging and, parenting, and then it just was like too much at one point for me.
But I
And
think that's
yeah,
his direction. I think that was a choice. I think all of the weird things that you're talking about, while yeah, they're strange and that people wouldn't react, and there's some strange close-ups, and he frames the film really weird because that's just Shyamalan's signature touch. So I think that is a deliberate choice. He also makes a deliberate choice of having a rapper in the film whose name is Mid-Sized Sedan.
yeah, that's
Who
kind of funny.
no rapper is a name in their name. But when I hear that and I'm watching the film and he names a character that, I'm like, oh, he's going for camp. This is
Right.
it. Like, he actually really doesn't genuinely want to take this seriously, even though it might seem that way. That's what I took away from it. But yeah, the stuff with the kids as they're aging, it's very strange. Like, there's a scene where the kids are clearly older, but the way that the camera's positioned, you only see their backs, and Shyamalan's like trying to hide this reveal, like we don't know what's happening, but we
Right.
obviously do.
Yeah.
Some interesting choices for sure.
I didn't mind the camera angle. So for me, all the weird camera angles and the weird kind of, the moody music and all that, to me, again, I liked it. I thought it adds to the whole, the Twilight Zone, of it all, like,
I think you
he
like
does
this
that on
movie.
purpose.
I think you like this movie more than you think.
I do. Well, it's a mine. I'm gonna disagree with you more strongly on the next movie and the other ones coming up here in a minute. But yeah, for me, it was just kind of a slight down. I ended up being disappointed, and I feel like, again, this could have been a great M. Night Shyamalan movie, and instead it just kind of becomes an average one. It's not.
Well,
his
can I ask you
worst.
something?
Yeah, go for it.
What is your favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie if you had to choose?
Oh, I still love. I think The Sixth Sense is the best of all of his movies.
Signs for me. I have a soft spot for Signs.
I like Signs. I have some problems with Signs, but that's a whole nother podcast discussion.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I like Sixth Sense. I feel like also you can't replicate Sixth Sense because at that time nobody knew what an M. Night Shyamalan movie was, and
Yeah.
like when
Don't
it came out.
replicated.
Yeah, it was like the twist of it all. Like, there weren't any movies that were doing that at that time, and it was so clever. And yeah, for me, that's like the bar. That being said, it's hard when your first movie is your best movie, and then everybody is always comparing every next.
Well, he got
film.
nominated for an Oscar. He was nominated
Yeah.
for Best Director. Got Best Picture. Like it made like $600 million. Like,
Oh yeah, it was
huge,
absolute
huge.
massive movie, a cultural phenomenon. Like, it crossed over, into, I See Dead People was like a, I don't know what I'm trying to say, a phrase that everybody was
Touchstone.
using.
Yeah.
And it just, again, I don't think it's fair for every movie after that to come out and be like, well, it's not as good as The Sixth Sense. Well, no
Right.
shit. It's not going to be as good as The Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
Like, that movie was probably the best he'll ever do. Now, he's made some other cool. I really liked Unbreakable. I did like Signs.
I like The Village too. I could defend The Village too, and The Visit. Yeah.
I don't really know about. I don't know if I'd go that far and say I'd like those movies, but I did like Split. I hated Glass. Like, that's how I kind of go with M. Night. It's like hit and miss. Anyway, let's move on to my next one. And for this one, I have a special virtual background just for you that I'm going to pull in. There we go. Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins. Is that what it's called, right? Yeah. Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins. Of course, starring Henry Golding as the famous, legendary G.I. Joe character, Snake Eyes. Also stars Andrew Koji, Ursula Carbero, Samara Weaving, Iko Uwais. Probably butchering all of those names, but an ancient Japanese clan called the Arashikage. Is that right? Arashikage.
You're the G.I. Joe fan here.
And then that's a deep pull for me. An ancient Japanese clan, we'll just say, welcomes tenacious loner Snake Eyes after he saves the lives of their heir apparent. Upon arrival in Japan, the Arashikage teach him the ways of the ninja warrior while also providing him something he's been longing for, a home. However, when secrets from Snake Eyes past revealed, his honor and allegiance is tested. It's kind of a generic. That's what you do. That's what you get when you look up generic synopses online. Is you get generic synopses. So that's the movie Snake Eyes. I'm gonna let you go first, and then before I even give a review of this movie, I'm gonna ask you some questions. So, what did you think of Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins?
So I was not a fan of G.I. Joe Origins Snake Eyes, but I want to preface this with, as I was leaving the movie, I was kind of like surveying the crowd, and I was just trying to find somebody who was a G.I. Joe fan. And I wanted to see, as a fan or somebody who, what was your take on it? I couldn't find anybody, so I just assumed it was absolute trash. It's not trash, okay? It has ambition. I think Henry Golding has a lot of swagger in the film, and I think anybody else, this would have probably been a much more miserable experience. I just found the action sequences to be unimaginative, and it's just a case for me of a studio that is just desperately trying to keep a dying franchise going, because G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra and G.I. Joe Retaliation, which were the previous films, they were fine, but they're not highly regarded or really talked about in circles the way, like, you talk about Indiana Jones or Star Wars. It's not in that. Even the Transformers movies have more clout than the G.I. Joe films. So to me, it felt like we were making a film for the sake of winking at the audience and let them know, oh, these are our characters. Oh, this is, G.I. Joe, lore and stuff. Oh, that's Cobra. There's some stuff with some oversized CGI anacondas that just kind of, I just didn't have fun. And I think the whole point of a G.I. Joe film in any case, or even when you play with the dolls or you watch the Saturday morning cartoon, I think he had fun. And at least the other ones with Dwayne Johnson, Channing Tatum, Bruce Willis had fun. I didn't get any of that here. So I was C- on that.
Okay. So here we go. I'm going to ask you questions. So again, this is all in love and respect. And I normally would never go into somebody's review of a film and pick something up. But the one thing that I took issue with in your written review of G.I. Joe of Snake Eyes was you kind of made these passing references to, like, who's asking for a G.I. Joe film. Who are these dwindling G.I. Joe fans out there that are
it's like, you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's me.
Good, so, we found one. Thank you.
So, like, dude, so that was my problem with this. Is like, okay, so, like, I get you don't like it and you think it's a bad franchise starter, but to take a swipe at the fans out there, dude, like, you must not know the G.I. Joe subculture.
I guess I don't. I didn't know anybody that was asking for a Snake Eyes movie. Nobody around in my circle, nobody was excited about it. So it's like, I don't know who wants to see this. And I want to say, judging by the terrible box office numbers, nobody wanted to see it. Nobody wanted to see it.
It did bad. That's for sure. There's no defending that.
But
of course,
I'm glad you liked it.
As we both know, box office doesn't exactly quantify if the movie's good or not.
Yeah, just ask Cloud Atlas. Yep.
Oh, I'm glad that you came prepared, though. That's good. If I'm gonna be prepared to punch, I need to be able to counter.
No, it's good. It's good.
Cloud Atlas, he says. So hey, I love Cloud Atlas, by the way. But here's the thing with Snake Eyes.
I watched it twice, still didn't understand.
Okay, Cloud Atlas or Snake Eyes?
Cloud Atlas.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you understand the Green Knight, clearly. We'll get into that later. So Snake Eyes, the whole G.I. Joe thing is this. I think people would be shocked to know that there is more G.I. Joe content out there, like storylines, characters, that probably rivals the Marvel universe. And I know I'm a little bit older than you. The G.I. Joe cartoon is probably something that you're just aware of or knew of or whatever, kind of like, for me, stuff that happened in the 70s. I was a kid in the 80s. So the G.I. Joe cartoon.
Joe is huge. Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think
Joe for me.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, it's impossible for me to go at this movie from an angle of not being a G.I. Joe fan. So that's the one thing that I was looking for, too, as I was leaving the theater or as I've talked to people afterward, is how did this movie play for people that aren't fans of G.I. Joe? And that's where I think, like, a movie like Iron Man, when it first came out, the comic book people were like, wow, finally a Marvel movie that was like from the comic books, like that was like, it valued like the characters and the stories from the comics. And it appealed to people that never had heard of it before. You know what I mean? Snake Eyes
is missing that component.
Yeah, I think that Snake Eyes might be missing that component. However, for the G.I. Joe fan, this movie was like an Iron Man moment. Where the other two G.I. Joe films, by the way, I hated. I hated with a passion, and it was because they were taking the G.I. Joe characters that I know and love, and they weren't doing anything with it. So imagine this. So like the entire Marvel Infinity War saga, right, is a storyline that existed in the comic books. The movies, in terms of originality, the Marvel films are not doing anything original. They're banking on all of these storylines that they're pulling that exist in the Marvel, canon from the comic books. So my point with the G.I. Joe movies is, why haven't they ever done that before? They finally did that with Snake Eyes. And I feel like it was such a good tribute to the original content of the characters of Snake Eyes. I liked that it wasn't G.I. Joe versus Cobra, that it slowly kind of introduced those elements like on the side. Like you see this as like a failed franchise starter. I see this as a cool character that there is.
I like Snake Eyes. He's a cool character, but I mean, it also felt like Storm Shadow's movie almost more than it felt like Snake Eyes.
And that's what I like too, though. And I compare that element to Black Panther. I think that in Black Panther, of course, now with Chadwick Boseman having passed away, everybody views it a little bit differently. But Black Panther is not the most interesting character in Black Panther. The most interesting character are all the other characters, and Michael B. Jordan's character and some of the characters of Wakanda. In the comic book, not the comics, but in the cartoon and in the G.I. Joe storyline, Storm Shadow is way cooler than Snake Eyes. So thus he should be in the movie. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's the cooler kind of counter character than Snake Eyes.
And I'm sure they were setting him up for his own film, it looked like at the end. But I also don't like these films that put the cart in front of the horse. They are banking on box office and global dollars to think, oh, this is going to be successful enough to warrant another film. It's like, why don't you just focus on the one first and then see how that goes and then focus on the world building. I like your analogy to Marvel because there's a lot of intersecting storylines, and maybe they needed to bring somebody in that's going to like weave the universes together, because I don't hate that idea of building this G.I. Joe cinematic universe, I guess, but the way that Snake Eyes is, it just miffed it. It just felt like a bumbling exercise that I just could not get behind. And the stuff with the MacGuffin, with the jewel that like lit things on fire, it was a little silly, but if you're a fan, I'm sure probably that's what you expect.
Well, what I would say is it's like, again, I don't know, are you a Marvel Comics fan?
Yeah.
So when they first show Thanos at the end credits, a normal fan says, "Oh, who's that? That guy kind of looks cool." But a Marvel character like passes out in the theater because they know what that means. The fact that Thanos is there hints to this entire Infinity storyline that you already know about, and now you're like, "Oh my God, that could be coming on film." Like,
you felt it on the inside. Except you're probably watching Avengers, it's going to actually happen because those films are good. But you watch Snake Eyes, I'm not sure if anything else is going to happen. Maybe for a Paramount Plus series, possibly.
Well, my point being is the introduction of some of the stuff in this movie, if you know the G.I. Joe canon, it hints at all this stuff that could be coming that I know are cool storylines because they've already exist. And I'm imagining them. That being said, I keep comparing G.I. Joe to Marvel. Clearly, the G.I. Joe fan base is a smaller fan base, I would argue, than Marvel ever was. So with Marvel, you have instant, like, more mass appeal. So Snake Eyes has to work a lot harder to get people into it. Here's my other argument against it is I don't think every movie has to be a Marvel film in order for it to work. I think that critics right now, and even some fans, are convinced that there's like a Marvel formula. I heard a lot of people, for example, saying that Snake Eyes wasn't having fun, or they needed more like comedy elements to it. No, not every action film has to have like Guardians of the Galaxy.
It's set the precedent. It's just what we live. That's the age we live in now. Marvel kind of dominates the pop culture conversation, and this is what audiences expect.
Just like your feelings on Green Knight, for me, Snake Eyes feels refreshing. An action movie that actually takes itself seriously instead of like wink at the camera every 5 minutes or try to have characters making funny quips the whole movie. And I defend the action. I thought this was a kind of a cool martial arts film too. So I think
some of the action was cool. Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah.
So that's my argument, dude. I'm a huge G.I. Joe fan. I had every toy. I watched every series. I've been clamoring for a cool G.I. Joe movie. I thought that Snake Eyes finally was it. but clearly the way it's been received is not gonna.
I hoped it was gonna go the way of what Transformers did with Bumblebee, and it had its own standalone movie, and it actually ended up being better than like half of like all of the Transformers movies. I was like, I could see them doing this if they for me, but it sounds like he did it for you.
It did. I actually really like Snake Eyes. I think most people, if they give it a chance, they will like it too. And the best news of all is, at the very least, every person that I know that liked G.I. Joe or was into the cartoon has absolutely loved Snake Eyes. So for the fans that it was made for, it was a success. But that doesn't mean that we'll see a sequel, because it kind of bombed.
Badly. Bigly.
There you go. Okay, I'll get rid of my background. Fine. All right, dude. Now to one that I'm maybe the least passionate about talking about, but hey, let's do it anyway. Jungle Cruise needs no introduction. It's based on a theme park ride at Disney World. It stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Emily Blunt, Jack Whitehall, Jesse Plemons, and
Paul Giamatti.
Yeah, Paul Giamatti's in it. And again, it kind of tries to breathe life into a theme park ride, making it into a big summer blockbuster. It opened in theaters and, of course, on Disney Premium. That's a whole nother conversation right now in terms of day and date release. But what did you think in terms of the actual film, Jungle Cruise?
Yeah, I was not. This ship sinks really fast. I can make all the puns. It goes overboard. You need to wear a life jacket. We need new captains. I'm not sure. I like Dwayne Johnson and I like Emily Blunt. I think they actually have a good kind of repertoire and a banter.
Were you using
that goes back and
puns
forth.
like in the Jungle Cruise movie? Were you just using puns to try to take
like the dad
there?
jokes that Dwayne Johnson egregiously makes, and it's like some of it's funny, but it's really just we're reaching here. I just remember when Disney movies and Disney franchises were fun, if that makes sense, because the Pirates of the Caribbean films, I could make a case for all five. I really like them all. And like I remember when the National Treasure series came out, those were a lot of fun. Even like if you go back 20 years to when like Disney started live at like the Princess Diaries, even I know this is really far out there, but just as an example, the Disney movies used to be kind of fun, and now they feel like corporate synergy. They feel like we're made to build franchises, to sell amusement park tickets. They're made to boost a streaming service. They're missing that fun element. And I know Dwayne Johnson is a massive movie star, and if anybody can open a film, he can, but it's really trying desperately to be the next Mummy or Indiana Jones, all those things. And it has some kind of swashbuckling fun elements to it, but the lack of it's an eyesore. Like the last 20 minutes, I zoned out, or you almost zoned out, because it's just so much is happening. And the way that I saw the film, when I watched it at home, I didn't have subtitles for the characters when they were speaking in other languages, because there's a lot of like villain, like Jesse Plemons plays like a German madman with a submarine tank and so on and so forth. And I honestly didn't think it made a difference that I didn't know what they were saying, because it wouldn't have helped. So wasn't a fan. Do not get on this cruise, so to speak.
Okay. And you know what's interesting is I agree with everything that you just said.
But I wouldn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't debate any of those things. For me, I agree with you, but I thought that the chemistry between Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, I'm going to keep calling him "The Rock" Johnson. I'm not going for Dwayne Johnson, by the way. He's always
DJ. I was trying to be official.
Yeah. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Emily Blunt, to me, I thought had enough good chemistry that made this kind of like a fun romp.
Really? I thought it was kind of stale. It was a little wooden for me.
Well, here's the thing. It was overblown completely. It definitely, like almost everything I've seen about it talks about how they feel like this was, like you mentioned, like a corporate, like somebody in a room made this, from the top down, like how can we boost, attendance at the Jungle Cruise ride, and you're totally right. Movies like Luca, for example, people don't realize that the World Showcase is a place at Epcot Center at Disney World in Orlando. And they've been just coming out with movie after movie that is like based in a World Showcase land. Coco came out for Mexico. Frozen was actually, even though it became a massive hit, was actually designed at first to be something that would boost Norway, which is like the lowest trafficked area of the World Showcase.
And look, it's Disney's prerogative, and their whole idea is they got to boost streaming numbers. They got to, obviously it wasn't going to go streaming. Obviously, pandemic changed that, but
Yeah.
they got to boost subscribers. They got to, like you said, they got to boost their bottom line. And I get that from a corporate business standpoint, but the way that they put quality into Marvel and Pixar, it's like, why can't that same kind of talent bleed over onto like live action? Like, think of what they tried to start. Tomorrowland wasn't that great. John Carter bombed. Lone Ranger bombed. This, I don't know if it's gonna bomb, but it's the you see what I'm saying? Like, the quality has just went down. Well,
here's what I thought though. Again, like the Snake Eyes movie, I feel like there needs to be some level of context here, because again, if you're a huge Disney fan, which is who these movies are made for,
correct.
I think that if you already have a predisposed notion that you hate and despise Disney and everything that they represent.
But I don't hate and despise Disney.
And I'm not saying that you do, but I'm saying if you are like that, I think it's easy to pick on
Loved Cruella. This is a Cruella stand. We stand for Cruella. I love Cruella.
I didn't like Cruella. Well, that's a different show.
But I'm just saying, like, I do defend Disney, but I'm just...
So a lot of the puns and a lot of the stuff that happens on the boat in the beginning is stuff that's actually directly pulled from the ride. When you go on a Jungle Cruise ride at Disney World, the skipper is that's the whole spiel. Everything that he sees, he's giving puns and things like that. So it's instantly recognizable to the Disney fans who see those moments as like, that's fun. Like, oh wow,
is that enough? Like, is that enough to be like, oh, it's I like not this?
Enough. But what makes it enough is I thought that Johnson and Blunt's chemistry made it fun. They borrowed a lot from Indiana Jones. There was like a sequence in there where they like stole from Indiana Jones, like where they're like banging.
Well,
like,
and the Jack Whitehall character, Blunt's, I think, is her brother, right?
Yes.
I don't even remember. Yep. But it was just Nigel from The Mummy. Like, you know, he just had to be the bumbling sidekick and make the annoying one-liners.
Interestingly, if you, again, for a Disney World person, have you ever been to Disney World, or do you go down there?
I haven't, so I guess I can't speak on it.
Okay, well, and that's okay. Like, again, that's just a question. It doesn't qualify. I always hate that kind of shit too, by the way. Like, oh, you don't go to Disney, so you don't get it. Or, you know, Paul Thomas Anderson fans are usually like, it's either a masterpiece or it's a masterpiece that you don't understand. And I don't like those kinds of arguments. So it's just a question. But what it does give is a little bit of perspective and context. But the Jungle Cruise ride at Disney World is directly next to the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. And the Pirates of the Caribbean ride is a way better ride. Everybody would rather go on Pirates of the Caribbean. But the Jungle Cruise is kind of like, okay, it's all right. You know, it's more for kids and it's not as cool. And I think, you know, I don't think that they set out to do this. I don't think that they set out to say, hey, let's make a worse movie than Pirates of the Caribbean. But I think in an ironic way, Jungle Cruise is kind of like the same as the ride. It's trying to be as cool as Pirates of the Caribbean, but it just isn't.
It's tough.
But it still kind of exists. It has its own charm.
Yeah.
It has its own charm to it that isn't Pirates of the Caribbean. It's its own thing, you know. And if you like the Jungle Cruise ride, I thought it was comedic. I totally agree with you. Like the last half hour, there's like so much CG and like stupid, crazy stuff going on the screen.
And Jesse Plemons, man, he's really going for it. Plemons is really, really going for it, and I respect the hell out of it because I'm like, I see him trying, and I'm like, you know, this almost works. It almost kind of makes me invested in it. Like when he tries to say, she says jungle, he can't say jungle. It's like, why did I laugh at that? But it's like, oh, Plemons. Maybe because I was so had a headache at that point. Anything was going to move the needle for me.
No, but, see, I like you mentioned Paul Giamatti being in it. He's not in it enough, but I think he's the only person in the film that kind of knows.
They want to start a franchise. This is totally they want to start like another Pirates of the Caribbean. So he could show up in subsequent installments. But I think what we're missing, like the first Pirates of the Caribbean film, it just had an energy to it, and like also Johnny Depp. It's missing that Johnny Depp element, that Johnny Depp like Captain Jack Sparrow character.
I thought Dwayne Johnson's character was cool, and I thought Emily Blunt was kind of she's like Indiana Jane. You know, like she's basically Indiana Jones, this adventurer, but I thought some of the banter between them was funny. And then the Jack Whitehall character, like you mentioned, it's like everything in this movie is not new. Nothing is new. Like, I saw that in The Mummy,
right? But at least, right. But at least in The Mummy it was funny. This is just not funny. I wasn't.
This is again the same thing. Like you're wanting Snake Eyes to be going more.
Yeah, are my expectations just too high? But I don't think I'm like the National Treasure movies aren't a barometer for any kind of like those are not like hugely critical movies. Like people that like critics didn't love it, But is that too high of a bar to hold the standard? Like, can we just reach that level of those two National Treasure movies? Maybe it is. Maybe my expectations are just too high. But I was bored.
Well, I think people can go into Jungle Cruise, and I think this is one of those films that I could see a lot of normal moviegoers just being like, why did the critics
it'll
give
be a
this
lot
movie a
more
bad grade?
loved than The Green Knight. I think audiences that are going to see Jungle Cruise will like that a lot more.
Two completely different audiences, I would say. Yeah. But yeah, man. So anyway, okay. So what was a letter grade for Jungle Cruise? What would you give it?
This is ironic because I didn't mean for this to happen, but I gave it a D plus.
A D plus.
But that
Disney
was
plus.
coincidental.
Look at you.
It was coincidental, I swear.
You were promoting it even by giving it a bad grade, reminding people that it was on
okay,
streaming.
let me ask you this, Tom. Do you think people should fork over $30 to watch it at home? Or should they wait?
Oh man, well see that bleeds into in a vacuum, you're saying like, is this movie worth paying $30 for? Because it's a different argument I
guess if you have 5 kids and they all want to see it, I could maybe make the argument because that's a lot cheaper, right? Watch $30. I don't know how much it costs.
It's rated PG-13, and it's mainly because it's got that Disney like it's like that's. I'm sorry.
No, it's like that. Yeah, PG-13 Disney is really nothing.
It's like for scary images and stuff like that. Like there's not like
the snake. There's a part where the snake like rips someone's head off. That's pretty intense.
Yeah, people actually get stabbed and like there's no blood and there's no there's no real gore.
And then there's also, and this is I just want to say this real quick. My last gripe is that they hint at a gay subplot. Like the guy is homosexual, the character. He's like elsewhere. Remember, he's having that conversation with Dwayne Johnson, but he never says it. And I'm like, Disney, why do you have to keep hiding? Like they won't commit. They just, in Beauty and the Beast, LeFou looks at somebody, or in Rise of the Skywalker, you see a kiss, a same-sex kiss for 0.2 seconds. And they're like, we are inclusive. It's like, just commit. Okay, Disney.
Yeah, I agree with that. Again, it's good that it's there, but it is 2021, and I think we should be past like the hinting phase.
It's all innuendos. It's innuendo, and they're like implied, and it's like, come on. It's actually.
I agree with that, and like I said, I agree with.
I'd rather them not do it. I'd rather them not do it than try to haphazardly do it without. You know what I'm saying? Like commit to it or don't. Just
sure. I want to also say that there's a character in the film called Trader Sam. Which is a character that is from the ride, and there's also a bar. It's one of the coolest bars in all of Disney World. It's called Trader Sam's. It's at the Polynesian Resort. So like things like that, like when you're watching it and like Trader Sam, like a Disney person's like, oh, that's cool. And Trader Sam's a woman, like that's cool. But to most people, you're just like, yeah, that's one of those things. These Jungle Cruise is made for Disney fans, and trust me, there's a lot of them out there. So I think that this movie is going to do well. And
I am but a lonely cynic.
I get all the criticism. Now, all right, we can both take a little stretch before we get into this next one. All right.
Well, I'm ready. I'm ready to go to the death for this.
Well, I'm going to preface our Green Knight discussion by saying that I'm clearly in the minority. I am representing the outlier
the 1%.
Yeah, I am the 1% in this equation.
I'm not kidding. I think I'm gonna go see it again this afternoon. I'm not kidding. I think I'm gonna go see it again at like noon. Hey,
I can't tell other people how to spend their time, but I would not. Okay, so the Green Knight, it stars Dev Patel and Alyssa Vikander. And yeah, who doesn't love both of them, by the way?
What a cast.
It's directed by David Lowery, who did films like A Ghost Story, and what are some other films that he's done?
One of the best Disney live action films, Pete's Dragon. That was really good. He did and then he also did the
remake, of course, not the original.
Yeah, the remake of Pete's Dragon, Ghost Story. Yep, those are his big ones.
So The Green Knight is a movie that is based on a poem that was anonymously written like centuries ago, like medieval times.
14th century.
During it was a King Arthurian poem. Dealing with Sir Gawain and a poem called Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. And this film takes that poem, and there's clearly a lot to fill in there. So David Lowery kind of creates this film, and I'm not digging into it yet. I'm just giving people the old description at the beginning here. He takes his poem and kind of breathes some energy and kind of takes it on his own take and like fills in a lot of the dots, or kind of interprets it for himself, or at least throws it up there for other people to interpret. And he makes a movie that is really more like, it's like a dreamy kind of mood piece more than it is a narrative film. Although it does have a pretty simple plot. The night, yeah, well, people can watch it, but basically, okay, King Arthur, Sir Gawain is he's a Green Knight himself, in that he's an inexperienced guy, hasn't really proven himself, hasn't done much.
Trying to prove himself.
Yeah, he wants to prove himself. A mysterious creature called the Green Knight, which kind of looks like Groot on horseback, kind of pulls up.
It's the best description.
Challenges somebody from King Arthur's court to, if he can land a blow, that the Green Knight will be able to return, or that person who lands the blow on the Green Knight would have to seek out the Green Knight 1 year's time, and the Green Knight would
meets their destiny.
Yes, he would deliver a like blow. So Sir Gawain volunteers, sees this as an opportunity to maybe do something with his life and prove himself. He lobs the guy's head off. The Green Knight then just kind of leans down, picks up his head, and rides off and says, "Hey, we'll see you in a year." So the story is kind of Sir Gawain's his journey,
his hero's journey to his destiny,
to meet his destiny with the Green Knight, and that's the basis of the film. So you're the guest here, Nate Adams from theonlycritic.com. Go for it, man. What did you think of the Green Knight? Why should people see it?
Listen, I acknowledge that it's a film that will probably be very divisive. I think the cinema score just came out C+, not an F. Was waiting for an F. That's praise for a mainstream A24 film. But I loved the Green Knight. I loved everything about it.
You sound like me in high school. Mom, a C+ is good. It's better than a C.
Dev Patel, hands down, probably the best performance of his career. I know he was nominated for Lion, and obviously he was in Slumdog Millionaire, but he's just like, the movie is built around him. It's built around his persona. It's built around his sexy charisma, kind of like he's got oomph, and the way that he carries the film on his shoulders is remarkable. And
like the character in Jungle Cruise, do you want to come out all the way and say something here, Nate, or are you just talking about his sexy charisma? You're just going to hint at it? I'm just going to hint at it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
Happily in a relationship for 3 years, so I'm with my girlfriend. So, but no, I love what Lowery does. It's very slow and it's very meditative, and that's a very niche kind of. You have to be into that kind of thing. It's weird, it's strange, it's got some moody atmospheric tension. But I love like the allegories and the symbolisms of like ethical conundrums, moral salvation. Like I love this idea where he's not like seeking redemption. Like he's not going to the Green Knight to be like, I'm going to kill the Green Knight and no, he's going for his destiny, which is for him, it's to meet an uncertain fate. He's probably going to be, killed. And the characters that he meets along the way and the cinematography was shot mostly in natural light. So even if like the narrative progression, which I admit can be a little bit slow, the atmosphere, the way it's shot, natural light, kind of like what they did with The Revenant, and the score, all kind of create this transfixing 2-hour meditation that really held me in grip. Like the finale is a knockout. The imageries that you see, I don't know. I woke up the next morning still seduced by this film. I was enamored with it. One of the best films of the year.
All right, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Do you recommend this film to other people? I know you liked it. Is this a film other people are going to like?
Because here's the thing that the reason why I would recommend.
Is anybody other than a movie critic going to like this film?
I think so. But I want to defend myself here. The reason why I would recommend it to people, because the whole point of The Green Knight, a lot of the metaphors is about finding redemption or finding the strength within yourself.
Now, did you find that out? And here's an honest question. I hope you can be honest with me. Is that where you walked out of the theater thinking like, wow, this was all about the redemption? Or did you have to spend some time on the internet after watching it to find out
No,
what it
I
was
take
about.
notes. I was writing it down. I walked out thinking, wow, this sense of not like a sense of discovery, which it kind of did have a sense of discovery there
So,
at the
so
end.
you're telling me that you watched The Green Knight and you know what it's about and you understand what it's about.
No, not completely. There's a lot. I have to go back and watch it multiple times to pick up on all of the allegories and the symbolism. And actually, probably 5 years from now, when you revisit it, Tom, and you probably will end up liking it, you're going to see all these things in subtext that you didn't pick up on the first viewing.
That's not true. The that's
But people, I
categorically
would
not true.
recommend it to people because the whole point of the story is to find the faith in yourself. And I trust people's instincts within themselves to think if they can handle it. I think if they give in to Lowry's vision, they will be surprised at their endurance. They will be surprised at how much the movie actually washed to them. I really, truly believe that.
I really, truly believe, and I mean this sincerely, I do not know of another film that I've seen since being a film critic that I would so confidently say
I'd fall on my sword for
most moviegoers are not going to like this movie. And I would double down.
Trust people.
I would double down on that. Here's what I think, and I'm not accusing you of this. Okay, to be clear, I'm not accusing you of this, but this is what I think. There was an interesting discussion recently online where a douchebag posted something stupid about film critics, right? How we all get in circles. We all when a film this person posted and it got traction and went viral about this idea that film critics all watch a movie and then they leave. When they leave the movie, they all huddle around each other outside of the theater and kind of decide what they're going to give the movie, you know, if it's going to be positive or negative. And then that's what film criticism is kind of like this group think bullshit. Clearly that's not true. However, defend that in terms of this is exactly what is happening with The Green Knight.
Well, I mean, defend what? Defend that we don't get together. We don't get together and talk about.
Well, we don't. But most people, everybody, I would guarantee you that 95% of people that saw this movie, including film critics, had no idea what the fuck they just saw. But then they left the theater and they went to Rotten Tomatoes and saw that it's like 97%. So they're like, well, what I just saw had to have been a masterpiece then.
I disagree.
If you would have went to Rotten Tomatoes afterward and saw that this movie was 5% and everybody hated it, I don't think that you would be out there defending it and falling on the sword. I feel like there is groupthink happening right now with The Green Knight.
It's not true because then based on that logic, then I shouldn't have liked Old, right? I shouldn't have liked. I'm a big
well, that's more of a 50-50 movie.
Cure for Wellness, or even something that I'm trying to,
Cure for Wellness has a plot and a narrative, and there's a difference.
Has a plot and a narrative.
There's a difference between liking a film though and understanding. I guess I'm challenging the idea that you know what The Green Knight is about. I
can't say wholeheartedly that I know exactly what it's aiming for, but I mean, if you read the poem and you look up if you see the Lord, I did. I read some of it. I read some of it. Yeah.
What are some of these allegories? When you say that you love the allegories that were in the film, what are some of these allegories that you love?
Well, it's just like the religious symbolism and like looking within yourself and putting yourself above others. Like it's all in there. Like, I mean, the subtext of a lot of what he's going through. And like I said, I talk about the moral salvation that he's trying to seek when he's going on this journey, where he wants to prove himself. It's like, and even the stuff with the fox and like being watched over and being guided, he has to make the decisions for himself. Like all that stuff that's what I took away from it.
Like I wrote in my review, that was the one good thing that I liked about The Green Knight was that it finally answers the age-old question, what does the fox say? Which I thought was interesting. I haven't come out and given my take on it yet. I've just been kind of picking on you so far. So I'll come out and say this. So, The Green Knight is one of those movies.
But before you do that, I want to say, even if you don't understand it, even if, like you said, you're saying like, well, did you get it? It's like, but I was still like enamored in it. I still was just like washed over by everything that was happening.
I get it. I totally get that take. And I'm just questioning some things that I'm thinking about. Because again, you mentioned earlier Cloud Atlas. Cloud Atlas is one of my favorite movies of the decade. And I am not going to pretend that I walked out of the theater like, well, I connected every dot and I know everything that this movie is.
And I haven't either.
It's still a movie to contemplate. And as you go through it, you think about it and you connect even more and it has more meaning. And I totally get that. It is not a requirement for a movie to quote unquote make complete sense or be spoon-fed to the audience. That is not a requirement for it to be a good film. But here's why I didn't like The Green Knight. the movie itself, again, it's based on a poem that religious scholars and maybe fans of Arthurian poetry might know about. So this is not a familiar specific movie. However, the theme in it is quite, it's a movie we've seen before. A movie in terms of a person who doesn't have he has a destiny and he has to fulfill it and he has to rise to the
But this
challenge.
isn't your parents' King Arthur film. It's much different,
But even
that's
what's wrong with my parents' King Arthur film?
nothing. There's
I like
nothing wrong
those
with it. But
movies.
that's why I like this, because it wasn't your parents'
Well,
King
let me get
Arthur.
out why I don't like it first, okay? So, this to me again, it's one of those classic films that film critics tend to like, that I think most what I call normal moviegoers are not going to like or appreciate. Now that takes nothing away from the fact that
Don't trust
you
the
can
audience,
like it.
huh?
Well, that's my point. So I tend to not do this. I don't like this take again, where if I get a movie, that makes me smart, and if you don't get it, that makes you dumb.
Yeah.
I don't like this
It
argument.
also
out
doesn't
there right
make
now.
it good either. Like
Well,
if
I'm
a
gonna pull
movie
this
like
out.
yeah.
Well, I'm just gonna pull this out because you didn't write this, but I'm in preparing for this. I read your review of The Green Knight, and somebody wrote the term in commenting on something. Oh man, I can't wait to hear all the Joe Popcorn people say that this movie is boring. And the idea of that is that these people just aren't. Most moviegoers aren't smart enough to get a movie like The Green Knight.
Well, I
So
think it's also
not
sarcastic.
Possible, it's not possible to just watch The Green Knight and think it's not good, because again, it's this whole argument with like Paul Thomas Anderson. It's either a masterpiece or it's a masterpiece that you don't understand. Like like there's some sort of right or wrong here, and there's no subjective art. Well, here's the deal, guys. I'm a movie critic. I'm not Joe Popcorn, and I did not like The Green Knight, and here are the reasons why I didn't like the.
But I don't think that was directed at you, though. I think it's more or less, so there are people that just don't even like. You tried to understand it, though. You tried to get into it. You tried to watch it. There are people that are going to walk into that, and there were actually people when I saw it sitting behind me, snickering and laughing, that just weren't even trying to. They were just like, "Oh, I'm zoned out." But see, you though, you tried to get it, and if you try, you might be surprised, and you might. It's like that's what I think that comment was getting at, was more or less.
I think that there's a such thing as pretentious filmmaking, and to me, a lot of this was pretentious. People talked even about the score, and like I thought that the score was cool. And then I thought it was very repetitive. I thought that it kind of went back to the same repetitive. Like I just felt it was repetitive. I felt like the filmmaking was stunning at times. It was like the cinematography and the costume design or the makeup. Like again, all categories that usually a film critic will pick up on, but a normal moviegoer isn't going in there looking for things like you mentioned, like, well, look at how this movie is shot in all natural light. Like nobody's seeing that from the point of view of a movie of a normal audience going. What they want is a movie that they can get invested in, whether that's good or bad, or whether they understand it or not. You want to become invested in this. And I felt like this movie was so trying desperately to be artsy and so desperately trying to be a piece of art that it failed in giving us anything tangible. Do you understand, for example,
the fact that we're sitting here talking about it makes it art? It doesn't matter that we hated it; it's still art.
Right, and that's actually and that's a great point. And this is what I'm pushing back on: is this idea that because 95% of critics agree that this was the greatest film of the year, it doesn't make it a good film. It's still subjective, and I'm curious as to why people are calling it the greatest movie of the year. I understand that it's different. This is another point too that I'd like to make. When you're a film critic like you and me, you see 200 movies a year. You applaud anything that feels different, right? Because most of the
we
things
see a lot, and that's probably what you mean when like the average moviegoer, we see so much. So it's like we see the bad stuff more. I think you would agree with me, Tom, that I see more bad things than I actually see like good stuff.
Yeah.
So when you see like something that like just truly just try to stands out from the crowd, it makes a difference.
That's what that's kind of my original take though, is I'm pushing back on this idea that, okay, you liked The Green Knight, but how can you defend that other people are going to like this movie? I don't think that it's possible
it's all
that anybody's going
subjective.
to like this movie.
I think it's subjective, but I want to say that I just want to see I want to trust the audience. And I said this in my review. If you can get past the initial hesitation, and if you can kind of just submit yourself a little bit to Lowry's vision, you might surprise yourself. You might be like, oh, this was different. I kind of liked it. See, the people that I was around when I was watching the day, like I could just tell that they weren't trying to get into it, and that's okay. If they don't like it, that's fine. I'm not going to belittle it, but I appreciated everything that it was doing and what it was going for. It's the same way we talk about Old and M. Night Shyamalan. It's just like it's something so different, and it's a departure from the everyday things that we see. That
what it becomes though is when people pound something as the greatest movie of the year. That's great if you feel that way.
This actually this hurt Parasite, because I knew a lot of people that saw Parasite after the hype and they didn't like it.
Yeah. And I think that this is going to suffer the same fate because it's being hyped up as this great movie. But more than that, it's being hyped up like this movie that if you don't get it, you're Joe Popcorn. And that's what I don't like is that you leave the film like, oh, I must be dumb or something because I didn't get it. And I'm also, I do feel like there is, I mentioned that viral, I call him a douchebag because I think he's a douchebag. And what he was saying about film criticism is inaccurate. But what's accurate